The honourable member for Regina, Lewvan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The day after Paul Manley was elected in the Nanaimo Ladysmith by-election, I rose in this House to ask about the possibility of adding more independent questions to accommodate the growing number of independent MPs. The Green Party is not a recognized party in this House, so its MPs are adding to the number of independents, which is now 21, the largest ever in Canadian history. And it seems only logical that as the number of independent MPs increases, the number of opportunities for us to participate in question period should increase correspondingly. However, the government House Leader rejected this suggestion, stating, and I quote, "There is a formula to determine the number of questions for each party and for independents," end quote. Well, Mr. Speaker, it would be nice to know what that formula is, and perhaps the government will be able to provide a more detailed answer this evening. I can certainly tell you that the 21, soon to be 21, independent MPs are now sharing only 14 spots in question period every week. We compare that to the officially recognized opposition parties, where an NDP caucus of 41 MPs gets 54 question period spots every week, and a Conservative caucus of 97 MPs gets 120 questions per week. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think we'd all accept the idea that officially recognized parties would receive some extra questions. They'd get a bit of a bonus, but it does seem that the current formula, such as it is completely out of whack. So to provide a direct comparison, the NDP caucus has about twice as many MPs as the independent group, yet receives nearly 4 times as many spots in question period every week. It doesn't strike me that this represents a reasonable allocation of question period opportunities, or that it provides a fair chance for independent MPs to speak up for our constituents. Now, of course, there's a bit of a history to this question. Earlier in this Parliament, the Bloc Québécois, which is also part of the independent group, raised a point of privilege requesting more spots in question period. Now, the chair ruled that this was not a matter of privilege, and fair enough, but I want to emphasize that that ruling does not mean that the current allocation is proper or that it makes sense. There may not be a right to more questions as a matter of privilege, but surely common sense would suggest that the allocation of questions should reflect, roughly speaking, the allocation of MPs. So when the government House Leader says that there's a formula, well, at the start of this Parliament, what that formula meant was that there were as many questions for independents as there were independent MPs. When I became an independent MP, the Speaker added another question to the Tuesday question period to maintain that balance. But since then, we have 7 more independent MPs and no additional independent questions. Mr. Speaker, I think that's where the allocation breaks down, and I hope the government would support reallocating some opportunities to independent MPs to restore a proper equilibrium. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as the member knows well, that the Speaker actually did address the issue late last year, back in October. And let me just be very specific by reading a ruling from the Speaker. And so this is a direct quote from the Speaker. I would be remiss if I looked at this matter only through the lens of just one group of members and their right to speak. Instead, I must manage all proceedings, including question period, effectively for the benefit of all members. It is the view of the Chair that the current allotment of 14 questions per week for independent members maintains an appropriate balance with respect to the management of time, the rights of independent members, and the long-standing practice of this House. The Chair notes that recently some of the time slots made available to independent members have not been used. I would therefore encourage independent members to consult table officers who remain available to assist in any way necessary, with the view to ensuring that these opportunities are optimized for all, for those to benefit all. This is what it is that the Speaker of the House has indicated. I would highly suggest that maybe whether it's representatives of the independents make the necessary arrangements with the Speaker's office, sit down and have that discussion with the Speaker. It might be somewhat fruitful for the member opposite to do something of that nature. I don't know if the member today, for example, would be able to indicate that there are no extra questions. Are in fact all the questions that have been allocated out to the independents used every day? I think that would be helpful information to be able to bring to the Speaker's attention. We, as the government, are not necessarily taking a side per se, other than to reinforce that the Speaker has, in fact, made a ruling on the matter after, no doubt, having done a considerable amount of research. From our perspective, we have taken some initiatives that have actually, I believe, given strength and to modernize the House of Commons in order to improve our democracy. For example, we changed question period to make government and the Prime Minister more accountable. There is a new Prime Minister's question period in which the PM answers every questions on that particular day. The Prime Minister has done more than 40 Prime Minister's question periods, answering over 1,600 questions. Truly unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented, Mr. Speaker. We have ensured that Liberal MPs have a strong voice in the House by permitting free votes, except in matters of confidence, election promises, or protections guaranteed by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We've introduced legislation to ensure the All-Party Board of Eternal Economy, which for years operated in secrecy. We've made Parliament more family-friendly and helped encourage the next generation of women to run for office by arranging for votes at better times of the day and allowing parental leave for parliamentarians. I think there's many different things that what I have seen over the last number of years here, where people have ideas and thoughts and ways in which we can improve the conditions of parliamentarians. We want to, as much as possible, explore different options, procedures in House Affairs. On a couple of occasions in the last couple of years, have had the opportunity to have that sort of dialogue. That sort of dialogue is very healthy, and I would encourage the member at the very least to maybe sit down, make the appointment with the Speaker's office, and then report back, or see if in fact some other sort of accommodations could be taken into consideration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Regina, Lewvan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Parliamentary Secretary began by quoting a Speaker's ruling that 14 question period slots were appropriate for independent MPs. Well, as you know, the Speaker made that ruling at a time when there were only 15 independent MPs. So I think it was reasonable at that point in time. Of course, there are now going to be 21 independent MPs, and what I'm suggesting is that the number of questions should be related to the number of MPs. The Parliamentary Secretary also raised the question about whether the slots allocated to independents are being used. I'm pleased to assure him that they are every week. We now have 21 MPs sharing 14 slots, so certainly if someone is not available, other MPs step in very quickly to fill those spots. The utilization of those spots is a matter of public record. It's not at all in doubt, Mr. Speaker. So I guess the fundamental point here is that it's quite strange to imagine that there's a formula for QP that is totally disconnected from the actual numbers of MPs. Thanks again.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the number of independents at any given time can actually fluctuate quite significantly, even immediately following elections. Political parties are often found short by 1 or 2 or 3 in terms of not having that party status. There is consideration that speakers do give to independents, and I think in most part there is this sense of trust and faith that the speaker will in fact respond in a way that is most fitting given the makeup of the chamber, and we have confidence in the Speaker in being able to do that. And that's why I would suggest to my colleague across the way, we have 21 more days. There's 21 more days sitting between now and the next election. It's never too late. I would really encourage the member to make that appointment and meet with the Speaker.